Welcome to the Smart Factory Podcast, brought to you by Catalyst Connection, where every day we work to support manufacturers at the intersection of technology, data, and workforce development, turning today's factories into smart connected enterprise, powering the next generation of American manufacturing. This is the Smart Factory Podcast. But first, a word from our sponsors making this show possible.
In manufacturing, unexpected losses don't ask for permission. A single equipment failure, a liability claim, or a workforce gap can stop production, and your bottom line, cold. Henderson Brothers works with manufacturers who know that real protection goes beyond a policy. From property and workers' comp to cyber coverage and employee benefits, they build solutions around your operation, not a one-size-fits-all checklist. Personal, proactive, present. That's Henderson Brothers. Learn more at hendersonbrothers.com.
Execution does not stop at your four walls. Even strong operations can fall behind if the supply chain is not keeping pace. KDL Logistics works with manufacturers to close that gap. From freight optimization and carrier management to real-time visibility and cost control, they help keep product moving without disruption. Learn more at kdllogistics.com.
Welcome to the Smart Factory Podcast. I'm Matt Holgitz, Managing Director of Business Development here at Catalyst Connection, filling in for Petra Mitchell. By now, you've heard the buzz around artificial intelligence. But beyond the headlines, manufacturers are already using AI to improve quality, preserve institutional knowledge, increase productivity, and gain a competitive edge. Today, we have Adam Marsh from Ledge, Inc. He joins us to cut through the hype and share practical ways that manufacturers are already putting AI to work right now. So stick around. You may leave with a few ideas and maybe even one or two ideas to bring back to your factory. So Adam, welcome to the Smart Factory Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity, and working with Catalyst over the past couple of years has been a great opportunity.
Well, listen, pretend you're on an elevator and somebody's asking you who you are and what you guys do. This is your elevator pitch. So give me your 60 seconds to 90 seconds. Hey, you can even extend it if you want. Tell us a little bit about Ledge.
Sure. My team at Ledge, we're located in Central PA. We service and provide manufacturing and technical support for manufacturers across the country, primarily in the quality management space. Is where we were born out of, and some background with my father in this space. I've been able to parlay my industrial engineering degree to kind of act as that industrial engineer for hire. And so we've been able to help manufacturers deploy solutions really from an engineering mindset. So looking at small and medium manufacturers who struggle finding that resource, we act as that resource for them. Over the past 2-3 years now, we've really embraced AI and technology as our next sort of tool that we're using in our toolkit to solve those problems. So I wouldn't say I've always wanted to be a software person. I come from an engineering, manufacturing, quality background, and now we have, one of the most powerful tools we've ever had access to be able to solve these problems and help companies work better, faster, smarter, and meet their obligations to their clients.
So you mentioned your father in your opening statement about your company or your experience in manufacturing. How is that related to what you do?
Sure. I grew up in this space. My father came out of the Navy nuclear world and started doing some consulting work back in the 80s. So I grew up getting to help him and go along with him. I think I did some of my early ISO implementations coming out of high school and very early college. And
Wait, ISO implementations coming out of high school.
yeah. So I got to help him, work with customers and understand what they were doing and help write their procedures. And so he always had an eye for tech, and kind of just let me loose on it. And so said, hey, here's the new computer. Let's figure out how to use it and where we can use it with our customers. And so he still works with us and is involved, and that has really helped us to grow. We're grounded in his philosophy. Coming out of Navy nuclear, he recognized how things get so, number one, there's certainly critical quality requirements, but also understanding the burden that the sort of Navy nuclear world puts on you. And so his approach has really been keep it simple. And we've been very focused on that with our customer base, which tends to be small and medium manufacturers.
Yeah, I would think that when it comes to AI, there's a tremendous opportunity related to quality management systems. I mean, it used to be there were two choices. You could hire a consultant, spend a lot of time and money having them help you develop all your documentation, or you could buy one of those CD-ROMs online, which would do a search and replace and create a quality management system that would fill a quality manual, but it not wouldn't necessarily represent how you did things. And oftentimes when you would go through the certification process, you wouldn't pass.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a really it's interesting. So we always talk about quality is something that our country is very competitive with because we have the systems and processes that we have, and that allows us to continue to be competitive across the world, but it hurts our pricing. And so that's where I see AI as a huge advantage, and quality is the AI tools initially have been designed around programming and paperwork because it's the safest place to deploy AI tools. And our quality folks happen to be buried in paperwork. So we have the ability to use them in that region, whether that's helping with things like first articles or PPAPs, helping with control plans, FMEAs, those kind of things, and just helping quality folks get through that stack of paper fast because we don't want to lose that quality. We want to maintain it, and it is a field that is struggling for people. I will tell you every week I get asked, "Do you know a quality manager who's looking?"
I think it's also the iterative process, right? I mean, where maybe AI can help you structure that first pass, but then as you speak to the individual contributor as to how they, for instance, do a changeover on a piece of equipment, um, the AI can actually make the editing and redeveloping of that content much easier, correct?
Yeah, I would say, okay, so that's an interesting point. I have 2 points to follow up with on that. The first is I'm using AI a lot as a bookend for a process. So I like to use it. Let's say we're going to work on a corrective action. Let it help us to write the initial problem statement, kind of take your brain dump, help with the first step, writing the problem statement, giving us some direction on root cause. And then I want the engineer, I want the quality folks input on what the actual root cause is. So use the AI tool as sort of a partner to solve that problem. And then once you have the whole thing written, which of course, AI can help you do that writing, use a secondary agent that's a review agent to validate that that's what the customer wants. So I really like it on that point. I think your point is well taken there. That initial and end process using it, ingest, human in the middle, and then sort of that last review. I don't have to have a second engineer sitting there review everything. So I think that's pretty interesting. And then your tribal knowledge piece is really interesting. We see a huge opportunity for AI as the bridge to capture tribal knowledge before it retires from these businesses in a really simple way. And so we have tools that we're deploying right now that are primarily focused on voice and photo. And by putting simple tools into the hands of your folks on the shop floor, we don't have to go interview them, which we're never going to catch them at the right time. These guys are folks who are getting stuff done every day. I like to think of the maintenance guy who knows where on that machine to hit it with a hammer and make it go when it's got a problem. But if you would put an intern with that guy to learn all day, he's probably going to quit by lunch. And if you ask him to interview him at the end of the day, he's never going to remember that. So we're trying to put tools in their hands that facilitate that data capture in a really simple way. And that can't be a VR headset. I don't see that as reasonable. So instead we're putting that low friction, right? How do we keep it simple? Just really a voice capture or a quick photo capture where he can give us that context and start building that tribal knowledge piece.
Yeah, so that digital work instruction, I think it was about 6 or 7 years ago, McKinsey did a report and they said that the first step into Industry 4.0 technology was going to be around digital work instruction. And you're right. I think that the AI is really enabling that. I've seen the platforms where they can take a video and that video can automatically be dumped into standard work instruction. Basically why you're doing it, what you're doing, what's the purpose behind it, as well as a step-by-step process around it. Just by taking a recording of the video, it's been pretty impressive to see the technology advance that far.
Well, I love this idea of taking that tribal knowledge taking your work instruction and then, your policies, procedures, and machine manuals. And that becomes your knowledge base that the AI tool can draw from. So now your new folks who are coming in have access to this rich set of data that is only yours. That is that full knowledge base of folks before they're retired. Now, encouraging that generation to give us that information has been interesting. We've been really focused on how do we train them, or how do we position it as training the next generation of manufacturing, as leaving a legacy instead of give us your info. It can't be that. And so we're working on that tribal knowledge capture is going to make sure I carry their name with that piece of information moving forward. I give them credit for it, and I'm trying to gamify it. So as we do it, we can actually show them to say, hey, Jim in receiving has given us 15 pieces of info this month, and report that back to the business so they can encourage that. Whether that's time off, whether that's extra pay, what can you do to help make sure that there's value there and the guys understand that what they're doing is going to help the company long term.
So I guess you could capture that through leaderboards, things like that you would show across the facility, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We like to present it exactly as that leaderboard. You still have to validate some of this data, right? So we end up with some, and that should be any AI tool that's getting ingested data. We still aren't at the point where I'm just letting AI tools run rampant on our systems. I still expect human intervention and approval throughout. And so that I even see it in this, like, even as little tribal knowledge capture, where we have a thumbs up and thumbs down. And I would present to somebody in leadership, you say, hey, here's the 15 new pieces of info that came in today. Are they relevant or not? To make sure that we're curating that data set to be what we want it to be.
So what are some of the other use cases where you see this? And when we talked about kind of digital work construction, we certainly quality management and documentation, things like quoting, other things like that, where workflows may be established, but there's an awful lot of data behind it. What are some of the other aspects of AI within a manufacturing facility that you see there's a roadmap for implementation?
Good quote. So most folks are, starting with the quoting phase on how can I get quotes out faster? How can I qualify that part before we even say we're going to make it, or before we commit to making it, that we can make it and meet the requirements. And so that is not even in quoting and just, around the drawing. And then the models are getting sophisticated enough that we can ingest the drawing, review it. Now, there's some concerns certainly around ITAR, so defense contractors have a different, animal here to kind of fight. But general manufacturing, being able to work with ingesting the drawing and turning that into a scope proposal is pretty interesting and becoming viable, that we can get more quotes out the door with more accuracy. Watching for things that could be a hang up. But I'm also interested in making sure that we're capturing things like the contract requirements. What are the deliverables at the end of this contract? Can we meet them? Did this customer ask you to be ISO 13485 and you're only 9001, and that's buried in the contract somewhere? So we're trying to capture those things so we make sure contractual requirements are brought to light before. I always feel bad for the quality guy that says, oh yeah, we said we were going to make this and here you go ahead, figure it out. And say, wait a second, we don't have that. We can't do it. And so I want to get in front of those things before we get it to the point where we have to ship this part. So, that's the first part is really in quoting, working through the contract review. We're spending a lot of time helping with scheduling right now, and helping folks who, I always say, they have a scheduling wizard somewhere in their company. And it's the one guy who knows where everything's got to be, knows when to do things. Well, that's a big risk for manufacturers. And how can we first support him with a tool that could inject, hey, here's the new 5 jobs we got yesterday. How do those line up into our schedule? And slowly then allowing that model to help, build that schedule in. After that, it's really, as much as we can on the shop floor, providing them info. I've seen less of it on the shop floor than people think. That tends to be the first place people want to dive in. My experience is that a lot of manufacturers have spent a lot of time figuring out how to make things really efficiently and make money on it, but they're really, really bad at paperwork. And so the most simple way to kind of get started on an AI journey tends to be in the office and supporting that team, and then being able to roll it out to the staff. Um, I mean, even simple material cert reviews, when materials are coming in, validating that material is what it is. If we can take that off of the receiving people or the engineering team who's spending time doing that and validate that, those kind of things are really, really time savers that can add some dollars to the bottom line.
Okay. So, you talk a little bit about maybe some standardization of data. Um, you know, just 6 months ago, and I think I referenced this before in a conversation I had with you, that, you know, the rule was that you better coordinate and clean up all your data and put it into one place, a data warehouse or a data lake. Now, some people are making the argument that, no, let AI go do that for you. Leave your data where it is and let it crawl, let an agent crawl through the system to pull what it is that you need. Is that the myth, or is that the reality that's happening now?
So I would say I see a combination of that happening. If I'm taking and I'm working on a project right now, and we're working with a client that has some around 3 terabytes of data, and they want their team to have access to that data at their fingertips. If I would just have an AI tool crawl that every time somebody has a question, it's entirely inefficient, a huge burn on credits, and really high probability they have poor results, hallucinations, finding the wrong file, that kind of thing. So instead, what we're doing with with that kind of data set is we're creating an index database where we're creating a mirror of their database with chunked small bits of data that the AI tool can more easily navigate. So that's been pretty powerful. If it is instead we're looking at, hey, we want our team to have access to our up-to-date procedures. I think we can point it at those folders, but we're going to have to be very clear and I would say look at that context and look at the guardrails or the harness that you're putting around your AI tool, so it only looks in the place that you're asking it to look. They are certainly getting better, but historically, our naming conventions, I'm sure, are pretty terrible. I mean, how many people have version 1, version 2, final, version 2, final, final 2, right? How do we avoid that and let the tools find the right thing? We're gonna have to be careful there, or your odds of bad data are too high that we just can't point it at our data set. Now, does that not mean we use AI to build that data set or build that index database? Absolutely. We can let it help us to guide on that side. But I'm cautious that just pointing it at SharePoint is gonna be the answer here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where I had been falling on this too when I've been having conversation with some manufacturers in our reach. I think it's still important to have some level of structured data before you start implementing these tools. They often want to go running to a recommendation as to what tool they should be using. So that kind of brings me to this next question about platforms that are sort of wrappers that can provide access to multiple tools, whether it's Claude, Chat, or Copilot, through these wrappers, so that it's going to choose the most appropriate technology based on I guess your current need. So what are your thoughts on that? Because it's considered to be the fastest growing industry segment in AI right now, the wrappers.
Yeah, I mean, that has been our focus, and primarily because we don't want to pick a winner yet. I'm cautious of a company saying, "Hey, we're going to commit completely to OpenAI and get everybody an OpenAI account." It's also been a problem that half your company is probably in love with Claude, and you got a couple guys who love OpenAI, and I always joke that they're one like weird Grok guy in the corner. And so we're trying to kind of get those people on the same page, but they might want to use different models. And so some of the wrappers allow it to do that. I would say it depends on the complexity. We're certainly seeing in some of the wrappers, we lose maybe some quality, that there's some restrictions between what that wrapper can get to realistically at Claude. And there's certainly some hardness put on there that might be tough to see. But the advantage there is really strong. I can tell you the last 2 months, credit usage has gone through the roof for folks with some of the newer models, Chat 5.5 and Claude 4.7 and now 4.8. And so, I mean, if you look at Chat 5.5 compared to 5.2, it is a 7x difference in credit usage. So ask the same question, and Chat 5.5 is going to use 7x. So the auto model selection is becoming really important to help manage AI spend. People have not prepped for that, and that those dollars are coming. It's going to be a line item on everybody's P&L, and it's only going to go up. So it's something that folks need to prep for and start putting that in mind. And I think some of the wrappers allow you to better manage that with your team, or say exclude a certain model that might be very expensive from your team that, they might not really need, or they might not recognize that they're using the Ferrari to go to the grocery store when I'm just asking them to use the Honda.
So when you look at AI and you look at how fast it's changing, I mean, you just mentioned the latest in chat as well as Claude. It's moving so quickly. I'm going to ask you to look out beyond it, the horizon, and where do you think AI is going to have its biggest impact over the next 5 to 10 years in manufacturing?
So I see this as a strategic advantage specifically for the United States to remain competitive, but optimize their flow and bring manufacturing back without having to hire the number of people that we think we need to hire. So I see a huge advantage where it's going to supplement our workforce. We've got 5 years, maybe 10, and you're going to see 50% of the manufacturing workforce retire. That's pretty terrifying when you think about that. So we need to use these tools to maintain our production levels, and we're going to have to dive into that. This is the least expensive way to get into Industry 4.0. And so I see a lot of companies who haven't embraced any new technology for a long time saying, we have something here. They can see the value really quickly. And I think this could be a jumping off point for a lot of companies who want to take those next steps as a first step into tech. So we're talking, hey, we can get in for, 10 grand a year compared to they've been looking at robots. They don't know if they'll get their value back out. And that's $100,000 or $200,000 bill. So they can get their feet wet in some new tech and start seeing where that's going. But I do caution that the workforce isn't trained on this yet. And I haven't seen companies spending time committing to bringing their folks up to speed. So that's going to have to be a new generation of folks trained on how to use AI and deploy it in companies, or folks are going to have to come in and get consulting help and get support from, local vendors, because it is moving so quickly and it is more complicated than people realize. I do have that caution that it looks very easy and things always look right. And if you do not spend the time to build these tools appropriately, you're going to be, what we've been saying, stuck in pilot purgatory for a long time.
Look, Adam, I really appreciate you joining us today on the podcast. You gave some really good information and some unique insight as it relates to AI in manufacturing. We know that this is a moving target for a lot of small to medium-sized manufacturers, and it's nice to know that there are partners that we have here at Catalyst Connection that are helping some of these manufacturers navigate this process around technology integration. And you're absolutely right. I think that the overall ease of implementation with AI is going to make that adoption curve very easy for companies to get into it, but to maintain it and to grow an AI strategy is going to take some thoughtful preparation.
You nailed it. This is not, we're buying software to solve a problem. You're buying access to software tools and to compute to solve a lot of problems, but you have to go at this with a concentrated strategy and team and a game plan, or you're just going to build 100 tools that nobody uses. So I would caution you to say, hey, let's focus on this, getting those first 1 or 2 wins, and then let's start rolling, and then build that system of, here's the 100 tools we want to build, and build them in the right order when you have the data to support them, and maintain them so you can actually get the value that is coming, which is going to be immense.
Thanks for joining us, Adam. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's all for today's episode of the Smart Factory Podcast. Thanks so much for listening. If you found today's conversation valuable, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone in your network who's navigating the future of manufacturing. We'll see you next time. And before you go, a final word from our sponsors.
In manufacturing, the margin for error is razor thin. The decisions you make about technology, taxes, and operations don't just affect this quarter. They shape the next decade. Schneider Downs brings the deep industry expertise to turn that complexity into confidence. Big thinking, personal focus. At work for your business. Learn more at schneiderdowns.com/manufacturing.
As a manufacturer, you know energy and operating costs add up fast. But what if a grant could help you modernize your plant and save money? Reducing industrial sector emissions in Pennsylvania, RISE PA offers grants to manufacturers with fewer than 500 employees. Eligible projects can receive up to $500,000 to install more efficient equipment that cuts emissions and lowers utility bills. Modernize your plant, reduce costs, and strengthen PA's manufacturing future. Learn more and see if you qualify at risepa.org.